Big day in our nation's history.
Yes.
McKenna attended a hearing today in the House of Representatives where I don't know how else to describe it. They just yelled at TikTok, just in generally yelled about TikTok for 4.5 hours at the CEO of TikTok. It was maybe the baddest faith of the bad faith tech hearings that we've heard. And then there's a lot of TikTokers in DC.
Mm-hmm.
McKenna, you attended a press conference with the TikTokers today, which I want to hear all about. But the momentum around banning TikTok is as high as I think it's ever been. And I came away from today thinking, oh, this is going to happen. But you're there, McKenna. What went down?
Right. So as you mentioned, today was a hearing at the House Energy and Commerce Committee. They brought in the CEO of TikTok, who provided testimony when he was allowed to.
Which was not very often.
Right. The lawmakers spoke over him a lot. It seemed like he was there to give fairly candid testimony and to say what exactly, he could say. There were some, private company questions that he wanted to skirt by. But for the most part, he seemed like he was there to really answer the questions that lawmakers had. But unfortunately, I don't think the lawmakers really had any questions. At the top of the hearing, something that really stayed with me was that the chairwoman, Kathy McMorris Rogers, she, in her opening statement, said, "Your app should be banned."
Yeah.
It seemed like a lot of the lawmakers there had already had, their minds made up about the future of TikTok. And why they invited him to answer questions, I don't know, because it doesn't seem like they were very interested in the answers.
Yeah, they said over and over, like, this is the most bipartisan committee in Congress. Everybody agrees. We're all on the same page. Everybody thinks we should ban TikTok. And it was just, it became clear very quickly that they had just brought him here to yell at him. And to not only yell at him about TikTok, but to yell at him about every bad thing that anyone in the tech industry has ever done in history. And he kept saying, "Can I respond to that?" And they kept being like, "No, we're moving on." I was like, what are we doing here?
But I want to put that into context. We've done a lot of hearing coverage in the past couple of years. We've seen Mark Zuckerberg go through this experience, Jack Dorsey literally tweeting through a hearing about how bad the questions were while he was in the hearing. Power move. Sundar Pichai, you name it. The CEOs of big tech companies have been forced to endure this spectacle many times. This one was meaningfully different. And I would say I was listening to CNBC on my way to work today before the hearing, and McMorris Rogers was on CNBC, and before the hearing had ever started, she said, "At the end of this hearing, we're going to ban TikTok." Right, just like straight out. The hearing hadn't even happened. The collection of evidence that presumably this was meant to accomplish.
Yeah.
Nothing. Now, there are legitimate concerns about TikTok. McKenna, just from taking a step back before we get into the weirdness of the hearing, what are the specific concerns that the government has about TikTok?
Right. From what I can gather from my conversations with lawmakers, there are two main concerns. One is for foreign malign influence operations, whether that's China, Russia, whoever, using TikTok to basically convince people that Taiwan belongs to China. China is going to invade. Everyone clap. That's one instance. And then the second instance is Chinese spying on American citizens, essentially using the data obtained from TikTok in order to do something when it's gone to the Chinese government. That's the one thing when I'm asking lawmakers, what does it mean for the average person? If you take my mom's data from TikTok, why should she be scared? And that's been something really, really hard to get an answer to. And I think this was fully on display at today's hearing. We haven't had any evidence that China is currently operating some kind of foreign malign influence campaign on TikTok. There's a possibility that it could happen, but it hasn't been found yet. And then in the case for data security, there really hasn't been an instance. There's been a number of instances where a handful of employees at TikTok have either tracked journalists, but again, there were accusations that Uber did that as well. Accusations that employees at Facebook had done that against journalists as well. But getting to the heart of it, there isn't really anything so far that differentiates TikTok's business model, TikTok's ability to gather data that's different from American-based tech companies, and the fact that they have a Chinese Beijing-based parent company in ByteDance.
I would just add one sort of half corollary to the two things that you named, because I do think one other piece of this seems to be, I guess, what I would call this sort of long, subtle influence campaign that people think, and this came up a bunch in the hearing, and I'm curious what y'all thought of it, but this idea that basically TikTok is sort of corrupting the youth and teaching everyone to just do dance challenges, while Douyin in China is teaching kids engineering. Like, this is a real concern, and it came up over and over. This idea that this is China's way of influencing American people, not only for the like the Taiwan stuff that you're talking, but it's this like long game play to just win future generations. And there's this 10-dimensional chess thing happening that a surprising number of people seem to think is actually real.
I think that's important too. So yesterday I sat down with Senator Mark Warner, who has introduced one of the most widely backed bipartisan bills that could eventually lead to a ban of TikTok. And when I was sitting with him, a number that he constantly pulled out was the fact that there's about 150 million American users on average. Like, the average user spends 90 minutes on TikTok a day. That is an hour and a half of content from one platform. And he kept, reaffirming to me the fact that they could have those subtle nudges, right? That could push you into believing one thing or thinking one thing that isn't so, outlandish as having, I don't know, an influencer from the People's Republic of China being like, everything is so good. We're not doing a Uyghur genocide, things like that. So it's those small things, of course, that are very hard to prove. It, of course, this is something where time will tell.
That comes back to, McKenna, what seems to me to be the like underlying thrust of this whole hearing, which is that everything is the same except China, and it instantly changes the tenor of everything, because you can say all the same sentences and you can end them with China, and the whole vibe changes, right?
No, that's correct. When you look at a lot of what happened today, and even the lawmakers oftentimes brought it up, they would say, all this stuff is really bad, the misinformation, the mental health harms, all these things that we saw so explicitly with Frances Haugen in 2020, 2021 with Facebook and the Facebook files. It was so transparent that this was happening elsewhere that it seems like we had often forgotten about it. And then the lawmakers would remind themselves and be like, but I also support a federal data privacy framework. And it's like, what happened to that? How long have we been talking about that, right? And so, of course, these Facebook, Meta, Twitter, Google, all these have so much, they have so much stake in the states and have built up their lobbying arms tremendously over the past 5 to 10 years with this heightened criticism. TikTok hasn't done that. I think it was just in 2021 or 22 that they even had a DC office. They weren't here engaging with lawmakers.
Do you get a sense that those American companies are lobbying against TikTok?
Yeah, so I believe it was the Washington Post, but it must have been a year ago at this point. But Facebook was paying a Republican campaigning organization to run a bunch of op-eds in newspapers across the country saying how dangerous TikTok was and railing against all of these challenges. Many of the challenges, right? The challenges I put in quotes that we saw today highlighted by Republicans. The NyQuil chicken got brought up again. It's why is this stuff still there? Especially stuff that has been debunked as almost media or false.
Tide Pods.
Yeah, just people who see something oh my God, it's going crazy. All the kids are going to die. But yeah, no, it's so these Facebook, at least Meta, was reported to have done this before. It's very clear that they're trying to point the finger at TikTok and be well, would you rather it be China? Or would you rather it be American companies that have this power?
So basically, Congress is saying we're fine with super invasive software, knowing everything about you. It just can't be Chinese. It has to be American grown. Only Americans can exploit Americans.
It just seems ridiculous.
Right. Well, it just seems xenophobic.
Right. There's just a piece of this puzzle where the American Congress yelled at a Chinese CEO for 4.5 hours today. And he was not allowed to answer the questions. And I don't think his answers are good, right? His big answer is Project Texas. And he kept saying it's going to be American data on American soil overseen by an American company. And I don't know, like the data center will be shaped like a flag. Like something will happen that'll be good for you. And like no one would even let him finish the sentence.
Right.
McKenna, is there a reason that no one believes that this is like a good answer?
If I'm going to look at this in good faith at the lawmakers and the whole situation, my good faith argument is that lawmakers have been caught on their back foot before. Cambridge Analytica, dozens, foreign influence operations on American, social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, etc. This has happened for years. They publish, these platforms publish transparency reports being like, look at all of the bad things happening. Oh, we found them and got rid of them. But they still exist and they're still happening. So talking to Warner, talking to some other lawmakers, it seemed like if there really is like something here that they think they need to do, it's the fact that this could happen again on a far greater scale and in a way that the U.S. cannot control.
Is the answer just that because it's China, we get to skip to the end, which is, boy, it seems like these apps are harvesting a lot of data. It's hard to make the case against Google because Google's an all-American company they lead the S&P 500 or whatever. But it's easy when you're like, China's bad and politically we don't have to sell it.
Well, look at, I think when it comes to these things, you gotta, unfortunately, campaigns are like a 24-month cycle now instead of like a year or 6-month cycle. You had Trump in 2018 issuing executive orders to ban TikTok, which of course we've covered. They were ultimately overruled. And then of course Biden now is dealing with this anti-China fervor amongst Republicans at a time when he's going to be running for re-election, at a time when Republicans are going really, really hard on China. I do think at the center it probably is China and having to do with electoral politics.
Well, and it also it seems to me that it's a move that these politicians don't have with any of these other companies and services. Like nobody ever talks about banning Google, right? Like it's just not an option. It's just not a thing that's going to happen. But like to your point, Eli, about skipping to the end, we also get to skip past all the nuance of figuring out what is a responsible, like you're talking about, McKenna, privacy framework for this country. Like these are complicated questions. They're the right questions, but they're complicated ones. And it's so much easier in a certain sense to just say, this is bad, get it out of here, in a way that you just straight up can't do unless you have this gigantic boogeyman that is China to blame it all on.
Well, and I wonder, McKenna, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Is this actually a politically good move? Because there's a whole bunch of people who like TikTok and will probably be really pissed that they don't have TikTok.
I don't think it's good. I don't think it's a really great opportunity to ban TikTok, or at least if you're not being as transparent about the threat. Because my main question when I talk to lawmakers is, what do I have to fear? In some cases, it's like blackmail. What is the chance that they're going to find my little data profile and find blackmail, on like me, and I guess like switch me, try and turn me into like a double agent, like China spy? Like, I don't know what they're asking of me.
Can I play some clips just to illustrate? If we were, 7 years into a privacy debate and no one had gotten farther along, I'd be like, this is a victory. This hearing, let me just play the Wi-Fi clip.
Mr. Chu, does TikTok access the home Wi-Fi network?
Only if the user turns on the Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, I may not understand the
So if I have a TikTok app on my phone and my phone is on my home Wi-Fi network, does TikTok access that network?
It will have to access the network to get connections to the internet, if that's the question.
All right, let's just stop there.
The pause before he answers, you can just tell his brain is just breaking into 1,000 pieces at this question.
Let's say he was just like, yes. What specifically is the gotcha there? The shit's already on your phone. That's where the data is. There's nothing else on the average American's Wi-Fi network that has as much data as their phones.
Their fridge?
It's like, oh no, they got to my Roku. I'm just saying, like, if we were deep into a privacy framework conversation, we would be light years ahead of, does it access your Wi-Fi network? Let's play some more clips just to put this into perspective for people, what we were dealing with today.
Another study showed that TikTok had a hydroxychloroquine tutorial on how to fabricate this from grapefruit. Now, there's two problems with that. Number one, hydroxychloroquine is not effective in treating COVID, so that's one issue. The second issue is you can't even make hydroxychloroquine from grapefruit. So again, this is a really serious miscommunication about healthcare information that people looking at TikTok are able to get. And in fact, it's being pushed out to them.
Is it? I have a number of things to say. First of all, if you just do the simplification of that equation, it's TikTok is telling people that grapefruits cure COVID, which is definitely legal speech in America. You are allowed to wander the streets of this country insisting that you can cure COVID with grapefruits.
Yeah.
You are allowed to wander the streets of this, and I don't think that's dangerous misinformation. I think it's not great. I think it's not true.
Can you ask Bard how we use grapefruit?
But I just the government is not allowed to show up on your doorstep and say lying is illegal. It just
the
is.
U.S. government.
The Chinese government is. That's actually part of the whole problem here.
Yep.
The United States government can't be lying is illegal. It is also legal speech to tell people they can make hydroxychloroquine from grapefruits, which is an incredible sentence. Welcome to the Vergecast, everyone. The answer in almost every case is the government should not make a rule that says videos that claim you can make hydroxychloroquine from grapefruits should be illegal. I don't think I think government speech regulations on the whole are bad. I think this one would be particularly hilarious. If we were there's the First Amendment, there's one exception. It's going to be the grapefruits, right? Fine. This clip where she's your app is bad because it contains this speech that I find distasteful. Well, she's saying the government is going to impose a penalty on you for hosting this speech. All right, I want to end here because I keep coming back to these clips. Let's just run the eye tracking clip and talk about it for 1 second.
I find that hard to believe. It's our understanding that they're looking at the eyes. How do you determine what age they are then?
That just broke me. And then he keeps going because what he says is this came up because Xiao is saying we don't use. I think it was.
It's our understanding that they're looking at the eyes. How do you determine what age they are then?
They're looking at him. They're looking at the
it's so
eyes,
good.
y'all.
I think this is the same lawmaker who was doing a Matthew McConaughey impression almost and was doing tell me why, tell me why.
I would say it was not our government's best moment today. Legitimate concerns about TikTok. Case not well prosecuted today. I think is
on either side. I don't know that TikTok comes out of this looking great either, but it feels like everybody lost today.
Just once, I want one of these social media CEOs to be on the they're all trained. You can tell. Yeah. They're trained to just take it and then try to get out as many words as they can before they get yelled at some more. And then they say, I'll follow up with you. Just once, I want a social media CEO to be all right, you get the unfiltered TikTok with no content moderation. Welcome to hell, right? Or all right, I'll turn off TikTok in your state, Senator.
Just yours.
Right. And we saw some of this happening today. Right, TikTok was showing people a lot of live streams of the hearing somewhat mysteriously. The TikTok influencers were out in force making content about this here. They're using their platform to their advantage. But this poor dude, his job was not to prosecute the rebuttal case. It was to just take it. And maybe he's not a poor dude. He's the CEO of TikTok. His job is to take it. I don't feel bad for him.
Yeah,
but
at the heart of it is really TikTok, social media companies not being as transparent as people want, as lawmakers want, regulators want, and then lawmakers, in this case with TikTok, not having sufficient evidence, but a really convenient enemy. And just yelling and yelling and yelling. And when you ask for evidence supporting either side, it's just the potential for bad is really bad this time, guys. And we all just have to take that.
They're looking at the eyes. How do you determine what age they are?
That's the worst.